No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live episode number 281. And breaking today, the truth about the attack on Tommy Robinson at London train station Saint Pancras by a hard-left agitator has been revealed.
Tommy Robinson was walking alone in a large train station in London when he was threatened with violence by a belligerent man who was drunk. Tommy repeatedly warned him to back off, but instead, the man advanced. Tommy responded in self-defense, and the man fell to the ground.
But that won't stop the authorities attempting to use this horrifying new incident in Sadiq Khan's Lawless London to cancel the massive freedom rally with Jordan Peterson planned for September the 13th. So, very shortly, we will hear from Tommy's close friend and supporter Ezra Levant, who you just saw there. He is the boss of Rebel News, who has launched a new campaign to save Tommy Robinson. Now, the police hunt hasn't stopped Tommy.
He holds a pint of beer, so you think...
The police hunt hasn't stopped Tommy launching his toughest attack on Nigel Farage yet.
He holds a pint of beer, so you think he is. You think he's one of you. Yeah? Do you ever think Nigel Farage has been in working class estate after 7 p.m. in his life, other than for a photo shoot? He don't give a shit about you. That's how I see it now, and unfortunately, telling that truth upsets people.
Analysis also coming up with our superstar panel, Father Calvin Robinson and former police chief, superintendent, author and commentator Dave Marshall. Also coming up on the show today, shock claims from Dominic Cummings that senior figures within Reform UK are cokeheads. What does this mean for the party? We'll analyse. And fury as King Charles hits back at Donald Trump over migrants. So why is our monarch getting involved in politics again? Then, in the uncancelled after show on Substack, divorce is on Meghan Markle's mind as her ex-best friend is embroiled in a shock marriage split. But why is the Daily Telegraph deciding that this is the moment to turn on the British monarchy? We'll reveal all with royal YouTube sensation P. Diner, and you can sign up to watch now, www.outspoken.live. Of course, at the end of the show, I'll also reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. You can vote for the Union Jackass winner right now in the live chat on YouTube. Here are your nominees. Diane Abbott, put forward by It's Only Me 44 for being the leader of pro-migrant protest group, from being the leader of a pro-migrant protest group. Sorry, of course, the role is president of that organisation, Stand Up to Racism, which we've been speaking about all week, right? Total Antifa nutters. Jeremy Corbyn, nominated by Libby Rachel, won, who says he is truly one of the vilest people on the planet, who would run this country further into the ground, if even possible at this stage. And Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, nominated by Muriel MBE, for describing the murdered children in Southport as having lost their lives. She says they were brutally murdered by an extremist, which was preventable. So 3 strong choices. And then, because we've got a special show on Friday, which I'll tell you about later, I will put our Union Jackass winners for the week forward to be named the worst Britain in the world this week at the end of tomorrow's show. So, of course, it was Narendra Kaur on Monday, Sadiq Khan on Tuesday. Who is it going to be today? Vote now in the live chat on YouTube. Let's go. Now, I've said for many months that the authorities are looking for any excuse to put freedom fighter Tommy Robinson behind bars again. The Unite the Kingdom rally on September the 13th, bringing together many of the world's biggest figures on the right, including Dr. Jordan Peterson, chills the deep state, Westminster establishment and MSM to their very core. And now they think they've found their excuse, and of course, the MSM is playing ball.
I am in London and I had a fight with the door. And I am at London Real. Where are we?
This is London Real, baby. This is where it happens.
And we'll hear from the host of London Real in just one moment. But the usual suspects at LBC, the BBC, the Sun, the Daily Mail have been parroting the police line. And the Daily Mail went further with this headline, exclusive. Tommy Robinson shouted, "Come at me," before punching man unconscious at Saint Pancras station. Witness claims as police hunt for hard right activists who fled the UK overnight. Problem is, that's simply not the truth, prompting Rebel News boss Ezra Levant to launch a new campaign to save Tommy as he reveals what really happened.
Tommy Robinson was walking alone in a large train station in London when he was threatened with violence by a belligerent man who was drunk. Tommy repeatedly warned him to back off, but instead, the man advanced. Tommy responded in self-defense, and the man fell to the ground.
And just like in the case of the Manchester airport attack on police, selected footage does not reveal the full context of what really happened.
London train stations are completely covered with surveillance cameras, and unless police delete that footage, it will clearly show the man besetting and threatening Tommy. It was 100% self-defense. In fact, Tommy immediately contacted police to tell them about what happened.
But Ezra points out the MSM doesn't want the truth to emerge.
I see that the regime media are reporting that Tommy has fled the jurisdiction, but that's actually not true. It is true that Tommy later left the UK, but it was for pre-scheduled meetings, including international media interviews. He's not fleeing. He had already reported the incident to the police, and he has never in his life tried to evade authorities. You'll remember just last year, he voluntarily flew from Spain to London to present himself to the court, even though he knew he would be sent to jail. Tommy doesn't run, not from thugs at the train station and not from police.
And remember, Tommy is filmed everywhere he goes, everywhere, including on his pre-planned flight out of the country.
2 lines, one on the left, one on the right.
Life is good though. I want y'all to see that life is great. Your life is great.
And of course, the attack on Tommy comes as Lawless London is quite rightly the focus of the world.
A lot of people are victims of crime in London, especially in their subway system called the Tube. Even Donald Trump mentioned London's decay yesterday in his visit to the United Kingdom. There were 940,000 crimes reported in London last year alone, and many people don't even bother calling police anymore. Tommy is more alert than most people because he regularly gets harassed by people who disagree with him.
And here was Trump, by the way, exposing the failed mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, in front of a horrified slippery stammer at Turnberry this week.
Go to London, or are you worried it's no longer a bucket?
About what?
Will you visit London during the state visit?
I will. I'm not a fan of your mayor.
Why not?
I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London. But the nasty person, I think he's done. I think he's
a friend of mine, right?
No, I think he's done a terrible job. But I would certainly visit London. Yeah.
And the president doubled down on that criticism of Khan while flying back from Scotland on Air Force One last night. Watch.
But Europe has a big immigration problem. But they also liked when I said that they have one of the worst mayors anywhere in the world in London. He's a horrible mayor, nasty guy, stupid guy in my opinion, but he's a nasty man, and I want nothing to do with him. But I didn't think it was a big statement, and so many people said thank you for saying that. He's a bad guy. Khan is his name, I guess. He's done a lousy job, I can tell you that. A terrible mayor. No, but people liked it so much when I said that.
And Ezra Levant says Tommy Robinson was simply a victim of a London hoodlum in Sadiq Khan's London.
I've spoken with Tommy and with Tommy's criminal lawyers, and I've offered to crowdfund this latest legal battle, which is nothing more and nothing less than self-defense against a London hoodlum. I don't have an estimate of how much these lawyers are going to cost. I guess it depends on how badly the government wants to go after Tommy. He was the victim of the crime here in Sadiq Khan's dangerous city. Unlike 940,000 other Londoners, he managed to save himself. If he's prosecuted for defending himself against threatened violence, it'll be just another case of two-tier justice in the UK.
And regardless of what Starmer says, regardless of what Khan says, there is absolutely no doubt that crime in London, specifically the London Underground, on the rise. Look at this. Antisocial behaviour on the tube, offensive weapon crimes up by 158%, robbery up by 107%, and violence up by 31%. So as Ezra has written in this campaign to save Tommy, Saint Pancras station is completely covered with surveillance cameras, and unless police delete that footage, it will clearly show the man besetting and threatening Tommy. It was 100% self-defense. There were 940,000 crimes reported in London last year alone, and of course many people don't even bother calling the police anymore. Tommy is more alert than most people because he regularly gets threatened by people who disagree with him. He adds, I've travelled with Tommy around the UK before. 90% of people he meets want a selfie, but once in a while some thug thinks he can take a crack at Tommy. That's what happened here, and luckily Tommy was able to defend himself. When police review the surveillance video, they'll see that it was self-defense, but I fear that they'll prosecute Tommy no matter what, just to keep him on the back foot, keep him in jeopardy, and keep burning up his time and money. But it depends if we can see all the footage, doesn't it? Because Don Keith of Tommy's organisation Open Scoop revealed on Outspoken here yesterday that footage does exist to corroborate Tommy's story.
So there is footage out there to show exactly what happened. So if you're planning on going out there and lying about Robinson, just be aware there's footage out there to be seen that shows his side of the story.
And I absolutely look forward to that. But of course, there is a wider point here. As Tommy ally Gurumit Singh argued, if you approach someone with hostility, a man that receives death threats daily, expect to get a clip around the air hole. Danny Roscoe, another supporter, added, whatever's going on, remember this. I don't stand behind anyone, I fight beside them. Your fight is my fight because I believe in the mission. And this mission, it doesn't pause, it doesn't flinch. It ends only when we take our country back. We're the first on the field and the last to leave. Tommy's not just a friend, he's a brother in arms. And I'm standing with him. No retreat, no excuse. The psyops are real. Many of us will be taken out. But if the cost wasn't so high, I wouldn't be risking everything. 2 years ago, none of this madness was happening. So ask yourself, is this chaos by accident or by design? Then let the record show I'm keeping the promise I made years back to Tommy Robinson. I don't fold, I don't run, I don't quit. I got your back, brother. Now, Brian Rose, who Tommy had been travelling to London to be interviewed by, also defended his honour.
Everybody trying to vilify Tommy. Do not trust or believe your media channels. Do not trust or believe your institutions, governments, or even the police force, because they have a vested interest in making Tommy look bad and trying to silence this man. And I would just like for the truth to come out. That's it. I met Tommy the first time yesterday, and I think I got to know the kind of person he is. He's not a perfect guy, but he also walks around alone. He doesn't have security with him. He said he gets a lot of love in this city. He said a lot of moms like to take pictures with him and they really appreciate him. And that's why he walks around like that. I don't see him starting these incidents, but I do see Tommy finishing something if someone were to attack him. And so I look forward to seeing the footage. I believe we're going to see some truth come out to that. And that's it.
Now, obviously, what's so tragic about this event is that Tommy Robinson was on top of the world and feeling more powerful than ever in the hours before the attack.
I'm in central London, back in the UK, and we are meeting the stage guys, the PA guys, to discuss our demonstration, to make plans for the biggest demonstration this country has ever seen. I've been back in the country for the last 4 days and I've been non-stop every minute.
And he did speak of exciting times ahead too.
Exciting times in the fact that the reception I'm receiving in the streets, the public are well and truly awake. Everything they tried to do to slander, attack, demonise, to break this movement, when they tried to put me in prison, Lucy Connolly in prison, Peter Lynch, all of this was to break you. It was to put fear into the public. It hasn't worked. It's actually galvanised the public. It's actually brought love to all those people. Lucy Connolly walk out of jail, one of the most loved people in the UK, yeah, because they know that she took the brunt for the people. She was punished for you. She was punished to send a message to you, as was I, as were many other people. So it hasn't worked. I see that by the reception I'm getting on the streets everywhere I'm going, which is wonderful. It's beautiful. I get shown so much love, and I also get to know that September 13th is going to be the biggest thing we've ever done.
Unless they can shut it down. Now, I think this post on X summed it up best. It was from the Right Honourable James, who wrote, "I'm definitely not a fan of Tommy Robinson, but this feels like a complete stitch-up. A random faceless guy provokes him into a fight so he can be recalled to prison. Right when all the street riots around hotels are starting up again. Feels very convenient for the government. And why are the authorities so desperate to silence Tommy again? Well, the great General Mike Flynn argues that it's because he predicted the turmoil in the United Kingdom before anyone else. Writing investigative journalist Tommy Robinson has been right from the very beginning in all of his reporting. This is what you get when you elect socialists to your parliament and into the highest office of the land. Margaret Thatcher is rolling over in her grave, and Churchill has already turned over. The Brits are in big trouble, and Donald Trump needs to put the farce of a special relationship to bed. It is no longer special when our British friends allow such utter nonsense to prevail. No, Keir Starmer, you do not know what you are doing." Now, Ezra Levant here, alongside the Superstar panel. Okay, Ezra Levant, what do you know? What do you know that makes you so confident that Tommy Robinson has effectively been really provoked here or set up and was simply defending himself?
I don't think he was set up, Dan. I think that this was a random encounter. I think Tommy is so well known that if you're going to do something like go to Saint Pancras station, which has thousands of people in it, you're probably going to be recognized by hundreds of them. A portion will be too shy to do anything. Some will take selfies, but I've been with Tommy on the street when someone recognizes him and has an impulsive decision to take him on. And that's what happened here. I disagree with that one Twitter person who said this was someone setting him up. I don't think so. I think this was a random encounter. Someone who recognized Tommy had, being taught by the regime media that Tommy was evil and moved on Tommy. I've seen it before. I've traveled with Tommy. Lots of love. Some people argue with him, but every now and then someone thinks they're going to tune up Tommy, especially that he's not a very large and menacing person. Tommy is, he makes fun of, he calls himself short, and he sort of is. So if you're 6 foot something, you think you might take a punch at Tommy and be a hero amongst your friends. And Tommy, repeatedly told this guy, back off, don't. And the guy advanced. And in that last moment, and listen, the facts will show what they show. The video footage will show what it shows. And I don't want to state what that is because I wasn't there and I haven't seen the CCTV. But from what I have heard from Tommy himself and talking to the lawyers, and I don't want to say everything here because there are strategic reasons to hold back some of it. This was a classic case of self-defense by Tommy, who works out all the time and actually knows how to use his hands. And he was reluctant to do so until that absolute last moment when it was one of those men was going down. Was Tommy going to let him punch him in the face first, or at the last moment when he could no longer wait, defend himself? And I think, frankly, that this was one of those 940,000 cases of crimes every year in London, half of which do not get resolved, except for in this case, instead of a little old lady being robbed or a tourist having a cell phone stolen out of their hand, a fit, savvy Tommy who knows how to defend himself was what was waiting the hoodlum. So I think it was a random encounter. It's 100% self-defense. I think that if there's a jury trial, Londoners will say, yeah, I wish I could defend myself against the crime wave in this city. The question is, as you so wisely put, Dan, will the authorities try and take advantage of this and really turn it into an enormous thing? Will they try and get him in custody and hold him till a hearing? I doubt it, but with Tommy Robinson, He's an enemy of the state. They will literally do anything. I no longer believe that the police, the prosecutors, or the judges give Tommy a fair shot. And I love the British judicial system. I love so much about the UK, but I no longer believe that Tommy can get a fair shot in that country. It's just he's being marked as public enemy number one. The amount of resources dedicated to shutting him up. And by the way, his message has gone viral. In the last year, I think I've observed, even from this side of the Atlantic, that the things that Tommy Robinson was talking about when very, very few others were, have now entered the mainstream. The Daily Telegraph, even Keir Starmer briefly said, "We become a nation of strangers." And he said he's going to, he said he would stop the votes. Obviously, he didn't mean it. So Tommy's ideas have broken out of the margins and they're in the mainstream. And whatever criticisms you have of Nigel Farage, and I'm sure many of them are justified, he is now where Nigel Farage today is where Tommy Robinson was 5, 10 years ago. So Tommy has moved the needle on the public conversation, and the deep state wants to silence him. I'm afraid they're going to use the legal system here. I promised Tommy, and I talked to his lawyers, that I would do my best to pay those legal bills. As you know, I do it through crowdfunding. We've set up a website called SaveTommy.com. We've done this multiple times before. We've also set up, as you know, a fund for his children, because, and I don't want to be macabre here, but I am worried that one day, God forbid, may it never happen, I am worried that one day Tommy, and I even hate to say the words, that one day he will lose his life, whether it's in prison, whether it's a hoodlum on the street, whether it's a terrorist attack. Let me give you one last fact, Dan.
Please.
In the UK, there's something called an Osman warning. It's when police have actionable information that someone is coming to kill you. And the police have an obligation to visit you in person and hand deliver you a written warning of what they know and what you can do in response. Imagine getting a knock on your door from the police, and it's Tommy. So what does it mean? Am I being arrested? No, it's an Osman warning. Tommy has received not one, not two, not three, not four, but a dozen different Osman warnings hand delivered to him by the police, telling him that someone's coming to kill him. So you can imagine, if someone on the subway is coming to kill him, he takes it seriously and defends himself, but he never starts fights. He tries to avoid them. I think the one lesson he will learn from this whole thing, Dan, I sure hope so, is he shouldn't travel in London by himself anymore. And that's just a price he has to pay for being so well known.
Totally. I mean, Ezra, I said this last night when I was speaking to Don Keith. I mean, I understand that this is a guy who wants freedom. I get that. But I'm sorry, Tommy, you can't be out in London without security going forward. And there'll have to be a way where that can be funded for you. Look, stay with us, Ezra, but we've got the perfect superstar panelist here alongside our father, Calvin Robinson, today. Joining us for the first time is Dave Marshall. Now, let me tell you about Dave. He is the author of The Fall of Policing, which was a bestseller on Amazon when it was released, and his experience is unrivaled. He was, until last January, a serving senior police officer. His last post at the College of Policing, where he was the chief superintendent responsible for national performance improvement. He's done 31 years in the police with experience in areas from crime investigation, terrorism, and public order, but is now an outspoken critic, I guess you would say, on the police involvement in social justice movements, including Pride and police impartiality. So, Dave, I'm absolutely fascinated to get your reaction to what Ezra Levant has just said, which is that it's impossible for Tommy Robinson to be treated fairly in this country. I mean, the police in this case, they ignore crimes all the time, don't they? Very violent crimes in London, but they seem to be all over this. They've posted describing him on X as a suspect. They've posted suggesting that he had in some way fled the country, which isn't true. He was on a pre-planned holiday. I was told yesterday that he had called the police. He actually wanted the police to investigate. So what's your view, Dave Marshall, on whether the police, especially under Sadiq Khan, can treat Tommy Robinson fairly?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me on, Dan. It's a genuine pleasure to be here. I think it should be a surprise to no one that Tommy Robinson has found himself to be the victim of a violent attack in London, and particularly in the London Underground. You quite rightly displayed the crime statistics there, where violence, antisocial behaviour, theft, robbery have all risen to unprecedented levels with withering detection rates in the process. So the fact that Tommy Robinson, and I tend to agree with Ezra on this point, I don't think it was a setup or a sting. I think he's just been the subject of a random violent attack. As for how the police will proceed with this, well, you're quite right to point out that so far there have been quite a lot being churned out on police social media, on mainstream media. British Transport Police, of course, will be going hell for leather on this, I suspect. Another one of our many police forces who have been captured by the progressive DEI obsessed ideology. And given the fact that they are experiencing such increases in crime and in violent crime, I suspect that that will propel them on to act in this case with particular gusto. In terms of what will happen next, well, you got to look at the way Tommy Robinson has responded. I always think about the conduct of someone after one of those incidents has taken place, and the conduct of an innocent man is not to hang about at the scene, knowing full well he's being filmed, call up the police to report the matter. And let's not forget that in this country, we still have a rule of innocent until proven guilty.
Well, we're meant to, aren't we? We're meant to, aren't we? Ezra, look, final word to you before I bring in Father Calvin Robinson. What is the plan now? Is Tommy still full steam ahead for the 13th of September? Is he able to return to the United Kingdom? Is he worried about arrest? I mean, I know you say he doesn't run away from anything, but what is the plan?
His lawyers are seized with this matter. The police say they're investigating. As far as I know, there is not yet an arrest warrant for him. Tommy never evades arrest. He would work with his lawyers, I would imagine. I don't want to prejudge it, but he would come to meet them if it were necessary. I think part of the investigation would obviously be looking at those surveillance tapes. Tommy is not a flight risk. He leaves the country regularly, but he has never evaded justice, despite what the regime media was implying. I think, if I can defer to Dave Marshall, he's correct. Police have discretion and prosecutors have discretion on how hardcore they want to go, even what charges they might try and graft onto this. But I think 940,000 Londoners would say, oh yeah, something almost that bad happened to me. I just didn't have the agility and strength to defend myself. If this were in another jurisdiction, or if Tommy were an unknown person, the police would look at this and say, a hoodlum got what he deserved because a man defended himself. But because of the political nature of the victim here, Tommy, I'm worried the police will go further. We don't know their approach yet. They have not communicated it. But I did promise Tommy and the lawyers that I would do my best to cover their legal bills. We can't let them grind Tommy down. That's what this is. It's a war of attrition. The process is the punishment, and they're doing it to distract him from his valuable political work. That's why I think, well, what's the least I can do? If I can help lift the burden of the stress of the legal bills off of him, and if I can help rebut some of the lies about him, that's my contribution.
No, and it's very important. Father Calvin Robinson, you've witnessed all of this. You're obviously someone who has been close with Tommy Robinson. What's your view on what's gone down here? Oh, Father, just unmute yourself, please. There we go.
Super. I agree entirely with Ezra. I think they're going to try and politicize this. That's what I'm concerned about at the moment. Tommy Robinson has become the unwitting leader of the patriotic movement in Britain. He is the figurehead of what is a shifting Overton window of people who are sick and tired of our government, our police, our judiciary, our king, all being against us, all being so disconnected from the British people. Tommy is at the forefront of the fight back. This event on the 13th of September is going to be the biggest event he's done so far, and it will signify a change in the culture of this country and people starting to stand up for themselves again. And so I think the establishment is going to throw the book at him. They're going to throw everything they can at him to prevent that. When he got out last time around, I sent him a message saying, this is not the end. They're going to keep coming for you until they can get you. And they don't just want to arrest him, they want him dead. And that is by design. Yes. They want to end his life. We've talked about this before, the fact that they put him in prison with so many Mohammedans, the fact that they mentally torture him by putting him in isolation for so long. They do not care for his life or his well-being because he is fighting the good fight for many of us. And I think now is the time for people to realize that he can't do it on his own. People need to start standing up. If they care about Britain at all, it's time to stand up. Civil disobedience at this point is the answer. And even posting memes at this point is pretty much civil disobedience. After the online safety bill, we could all go to jail for tweeting the wrong thing. So just start speaking up, please.
There's a reason why there is that absolute desperation, though, to silence Tommy Robinson, to silence him at any cost. Because since his release from HMP Woodhill, he is becoming increasingly political, increasingly vocal, but the difference from before is that his message is now being picked up across the population as the Overton window shifts politically, but also independent media starts to take over, with YouTube now revealed to be the second biggest broadcaster in the United Kingdom behind the British Bashing Corporation, overtaking woke ITV. And this is just the beginning of a change in how we communicate, folks. And before his attack, Tommy Robinson sat down on the London Real interview show where he made clear that he had tried to make a truce with Reform UK and Nigel Farage, but that truce has now ended because this is a political party where if you speak about Islam, you will be kicked out. Watch.
Will you ever be part of a political party?
I'd rather not. I would have hoped and I wished that Reform would be the political party for the people. In fact, I tried to make a truce multiple times.
With Nigel? With
Nigel. And on stage, I tried to just say, listen, Nigel has continually lied about me to the public. In fact, when I was in jail on solitary confinement, he went on TV and said, I've got convictions for violence against women. He just made it up. So I don't understand it.
Why?
I look at, so what happened with Nigel? So Marine Le Pen's just been banned from standing. You saw this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they used the fact that she made money when she had her members of European Parliament in Europe and used it for her domestic things. That's why they went for her criminally. From what I understand, Nigel done the same. Yeah. And he was investigated in 2019. Well, that investigation was quashed and went away. And according to people close to Nigel, because I spoke to all of them now, yeah, so he was under investigation and it was went, which seems a bit sus anyway, yeah. And since then, Nigel now, you've got Fraser Nelson, you've got all the left are now propping him up as the next Prime Minister. It's like he's been chosen by the establishment, and he's took the establishment line on everything. Right. On Islam, he won't talk about Islam, never has. In fact, he's given his chairman position to Zia Youssef, a Muslim. And then what's he done since then? He said Shamina Begum wants to come back. Then what's he said? That we need to prepare for the Islamic demographic majority. This is his words. By 2050, we can't alienate Islam because they're going to become so dominant. Well, Nigel, we need to stop that shit. Yeah? Let's not hold up the white flag. I want a leader that's going to stop it. And then people make the excuse, oh, he's just trying to get into power. He's trying to get in power by filling his party with the same establishment figures that betrayed us for the last 20 years.
Right.
So I get frustrated and I wish Nigel was the solution. And I tried to make peace. And I wish when Nigel came out and said that he's not bothered about the demographic replacement in this country, which means he's not bothered that white English people will become a minority in England. Well, I am. And so are the vast majority of this country. And what we saw in the polling this week is that majority of people who also understand Islam needs stopping. Yeah? And someone needs to challenge it. Right now, Reform will kick you out of their party if you speak about Islam.
And then Tommy revealed his most personally strident anti-Nigel commentary yet, saying that he is no different to the establishment, saying quite specifically that he believes Nigel will sell out the working classes, and putting a direct message to his supporters that Nigel Farage doesn't give a shit about you. Watch.
Because the establishment don't want to deal with this. Yeah? They want to hide from it. They're not going to deal with it. The same establishment that covered up the grooming gangs. Why did Rupert Lowe get kicked out of Reform? According to him, because he was talking about the rape gangs, Pakistani rape gangs. So Nigel is crushing down on the establishment thing. So people won't like hearing it because people think Reform is the solution. Unfortunately, no, it's not. Nigel's going to be no different. He's going to sell you out. Is Nigel working class? He went to some posh private school. He holds a pint of beer, so you think he is. You think he's one of you. Yeah. Do you ever think Nigel Farage has been in working class estate after 7 p.m. in his life, other than for a photo shoot? He don't give a shit about you. That's how I see it now. And unfortunately, telling that truth upsets people. And I wish it wasn't that case. I wish Nigel would have been the populist voice that Britain needs, because it's all primed for him. The country's ready for it. Yeah. But as the country's ready for it, in steps the establishment, and they take control of it. They know now. No one's going to vote for Labour. No one's going to vote for Conservative. Along come Reform and Nigel Farage. What's he going to do? Oh, he's going to stop the boats. Well, the boats ain't the only problem, are they? In fact, Reform's policy at the start of the election was 1 in, 1 out. Well, 500,000 Brits left last year. 500,000. So they're going to get 500,000 rid of Brits, and what? 500,000 Africans are coming in, are they? That was their policy. That's Reform. They changed the wind. What does Nigel even believe? At least you know what we believe. So I think that Rupert Lowe, I saw what happened with Rupert Lowe. I think that he's become a strong voice. I've looked at Ben Habib, Advance, lots of the people who were kicked out for their free speech. There is no free speech. How can you have a political party that want to govern this country like Reform when they have they don't believe in free speech? They don't believe in free speech. Nigel doesn't. In fact, he's got NDAs and agreements that anyone who steps in is not allowed to mention my name. They can't have Reform councillors that say anything positive about me. What? You're a dictatorship, bruv. That's not free speech. So yeah, enough about Nigel Farage anyway. Nigel, I want an apology for making up your bullshit about violence against women. Or at some point I will be finding you with a camera.
Okay, so to the superstar panel. Wow, Ezra Levant, this is a change. This is certainly Tommy upping the political rhetoric. He had, at the last election, endorsed Reform UK. Even when I saw him at HMP Woodhill in December, he was trying to make peace with Nigel Farage. His message was, Nigel, just stop attacking me. But clearly now, he has felt differently. He feels like Nigel is not a viable option. What do you make of it?
Well, I want to be careful about weighing in too deeply on this because I'm not a British citizen. And in the end, this is for British voters, not for me. From an outsider's point of view, I think Tommy is a man of the movement. He's an ideas man, a communicator. He's in the trenches. For example, on the rape gangs story, he has met with countless victims and produced documentaries. So that's a very important role. Very different from Nigel Farage's role. But look, you can't lie. The polls don't lie. The council elections don't lie. Reform UK is on the march. So I want to, as an outsider, express that I think both men have an important role here. Tommy is, I think, one standard deviation tougher on these issues. He's more engrossed with them. Nigel is a politician. He doesn't deny it. Only one of those men, has a chance of becoming prime minister. And for all his flaws, and you may disagree with me on this, Dan, and I hope I'm not overstepping, but I think Nigel is the only chance for a prime minister who would stop the boats, freeze immigration. And I know he's been waffling on mass deportations, but I think Nigel makes mistakes and then always sort of strengthens up when the grassroots show him the way. So I want to try and admire both men for what they do. And there's a saying, don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. And I think both Tommy and Nigel can take from that message. I mean, Tommy is not built for elected politics. He's an activist. Nigel is a politician, but both have their important roles. That's my view, Dan, and forgive me if I'm off base as a Canadian looking in from the outside.
No, I think that's really fascinating, actually, and I'll bring Father Calvin Robertson in, who will have very strong views on that, and thank you for being with us, Ezra. I guess just before I come to you, Calvin, as an example of why maybe Nigel is not going where we need to go, World by Wolf had posted saying, where's the deportations plan? Copying Nzia Yusuf, the head of Doge at Reform UK. You promised on the 26th of April that it would be published in May. We're now approaching August. The Tories have published a deportations bill. Even the knuckleheads of Reform HQ should be able to put together a 5 to 10 pager within 3 months. And Rael Braverman, who is the husband of the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, added, and remember he quit Reform very recently, added, where is the deportation plan? This is a very important question, even though I don't agree with the knuckleheads comment. So, Father Calvin, I guess the argument is, does Nigel Farage really care about making the tough decisions here?
I think Nigel Farage cares about Nigel Farage, unfortunately. Ezra's right in that he is a politician, but that's the problem. We need someone that isn't now. We've had enough of career politicians. We've had enough of ambitious individuals who just want to be a part of the establishment, want to be a member of the elite. Nigel Farage is one of those, unfortunately. We all know him. We all know what he's like. He doesn't go far enough either. So even if he did care, which I don't believe he does, but even if he did, we need someone who can say, actually, we've had enough immigration now. The country is full. In fact, it's beyond full. We need mass deportation. We need repatriation. Controlling the borders is about more than just stopping the illegal immigrants. Nigel Farage is pro-immigration. We need a prime minister who is anti-immigration. We need someone who could say the things that Tommy just said in that clip, that actually, yes, it is a bad thing if England is no longer English. It's a bad thing if a predominantly white country is no longer predominantly white. And someone who's not afraid to say those things because they're accused of being racist or xenophobic or whatever. Like, we need someone who has the kahunas to take the country where it needs to go. We're in dire straits. It's make or break time for the whole of the West right now. We need a wild card. The reason America is doing so well is because Donald Trump was a wild card. He wasn't just another. And we've had so many just anothers. We voted for the Labour Party until we got sick of them. We vote for the Conservative Party until we get sick of them. If we vote for reform, we'll have more of the same until we get sick of them. We need someone different, someone willing and able with the political capital to change things and turn our country back around to make Britain great again.
Yeah, because by the way, we are in such a bad state. And unfortunately, sometimes maybe when you're close to the problem, you just don't get it. So Trump on Air Force One last night was told by Bev Turner of GB News, who's doing a great job, that there are actually people in jail in the United Kingdom for social media posts. His response is fascinating to watch.
Are you saying that that's taking place in the UK? Yeah. Is it really? Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing that. Well, I looked at it yesterday. Well, they said they canceled Truth Social. I'll bet it's uncanceled very quickly. I'll bet it's uncanceled. Yeah. No, it's a little different. It's different. I see it in some countries that you would never suspect it. Not only there. I've seen it in other countries where, you know, they're like bread and pudding countries, I think, and then all of a sudden they become somewhat violent. You know, when people go socialistic, or when you get the radical left or the left going in, the countries actually become very mean. They become two things, mean and incompetently run simultaneously.
And I mean, my goodness, he's so right. And what's really interesting is there is, I guess, some type of unity now in the United Kingdom. And a lot of this was sparked, and I'm very proud to say it was started here on Outspoken with the case of Lucy Connolly and the huge outrage that has grown. So we heard Tommy Robinson say yesterday that Lucy Connolly will actually emerge from prison as one of the most popular people in the United Kingdom. And Alison Pearson, who took this story from us in the independent media and made it go just huge at the Daily Telegraph, has written a brilliant column on this. And I just want to share it with you. She writes, they tried to break Lucy Connolly, but the decent people of Britain will never desert her. A year on from the Southport massacre, the childminder who dared to express her anger over immigration is still in jail. But she added, what is interesting, I think, is to consider how Lucy Connolly's tweet was uncannily prophetic. The national temper has not cooled since Southport. On the contrary, Britain is angrier than I have ever known it. Parents, grandparents, and concerned residents are gathering outside migrant hotels from Bournemouth to Norwich, expressing their anger at the threat posed to women and children by undocumented young males from backward, misogynistic cultures. Exactly the point Lucy made to police on the day of her arrest. Alison Pearson added, yesterday I spoke to Orla Minahani, mother of 3 teenagers and a Reform UK council candidate who gave a magnificent impromptu speech in Epping, saying that the protesters were not far right, as the media and the authorities like to allege. It was a peaceful demonstration by normal British people who have had enough and were going to protect their kids come what may. Lucy will be a national hero when she gets out, Ola Minhani told me. And this is why our government fears her. One ordinary woman, a bereaved mother herself, enraged by the massacre of little girls, has acquired a force because she articulated the furious anguish of millions and had to be punished for it. And then Alison Pearson puts forward an intriguing, delicious proposition. What if Lucy Connolly were to run against Yvette Cooper at the next general election and the patriotic people of West Yorkshire chose to vote to protect British children and showed what they think of a Labour government that is allowing our country to be invaded so there is no Britain anymore? Don't rule it out. We know it now, don't we? This is our last stand. And Dave Marshall, such powerful words there from Alison Pearson. And I do wonder how, from a policing point of view, British forces can continue to justify the total control of social media, the desire to prosecute, to send people to jail for tweets. Now this elite squad has been set up specifically to go after social media when we know that there are violent crimes on a daily basis that are ignored.
I was a police officer for over 30 years, Dan, and if you told me when I first put a police uniform on that we would be locking people up for expressing their honestly held beliefs and opinions, I would have laughed in your face. But the reality is that is where the country is at the moment. And all the while, serious, violent crime is on the up. Acquisitive crime, shoplifting, antisocial behaviour, all these things are on the rise. And yet, our police chiefs, who are, let's be honest, as ideologically captured as they can be by this stuff, are prioritising social media posts and investigating those who post things that go against the establishment narrative on X and elsewhere, and dedicating resources to policing the internet before they clear up the absolute mess that's been created with years of neglect in dealing with real crime, real violent crime.
Because what we've seen, Dave, is when there is real crime, very often it's failed to be tackled. And we got a shocking example of that last year, didn't we, with the Manchester airport attack, where these two brothers, Mohammed Fayer Amaz, aged 20, from Rochdale, and his brother Mohammed Ahmad, aged 28, were accused of this violent crime at Manchester airport against police. But do you remember when it first emerged, all of the sympathy was with these two thugs. All of the sympathy from the political establishment, from the mainstream media. We even had Yvette Cooper and Paul Wall, Labour MPs, say, you know, that the police had got this wrong. Well, today in court, and I find it astonishing that only one of these brothers has been found guilty, but one of the brothers has been found guilty in court today. There will be a retrial, we have just learned, for the other brother. And I will talk about this much more tomorrow, actually. But I just wanted to remind people of some of my coverage from Outspoken at the time, which you weren't getting from the mainstream media, which was so astonishing when you actually saw the full videos here. And we know one of these brothers is guilty. So we can say that one of these brothers is a guilty thug who attacked a police officer. And do you remember that the mainstream media went along with this narrative that they were the victims? Watch. Now, you've got to remember the grift that was involved in their case. Do you remember when their ridiculous first lawyer, Ahmed Yaqub, claimed that one of his clients had been the victim of an assassination attempt?
The family are okay, but they are traumatized. Mohammed Fahir, his medical condition has worsened since last night. A CT scan has revealed there is a cyst on his brain. So please pray for his well-being. Right now, the main concern for us, for me, is that the family receive justice and this no longer happens again.
Then the MSM lapped up this press conference with their new lawyer trying to present them as victims. So Dave Marshall, even though obviously I'm highly critical of so much of the police behaviour, the problem is then we get a case where the police are literally beaten to a pulp, a couple of those policewomen, by these thugs, one of whom is now convicted, guilty, the other of whom will be retried. So I guess we have to be slightly careful about him. What happened? The whole political establishment turned against them. The whole mainstream media turned against them. So yes, we can criticise the police, and as we do, because they get so much wrong. But then they are literally physically attacked by thugs who happen to be Muslim, and no one gives a damn. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, it's a complete inversion of reality. I mean, the way that this particular situation was reported by mainstream media and some of our political establishment beggared belief. And I remember commenting on this at the time, and there's shades of the Tommy Robinson incident and this, that be very careful not to judge what you see in the space of a 20-second or 30-second grainy video clip. And I was really disappointed that even some serving senior police officers were jumping to conclusions on the basis of that clip of the Manchester incident that showed the officer use that, what was described as excessive force. And I'm not condoning that, and I'm not condoning violence. But if we remember what happened post Southport and the speed at which people were arrested and prosecuted, most of them for minor public order offences or posting things on social media, they were swiftly arrested, taken through the courts and put in prison. And Lucy Connolly was just one of those people. Why has this taken over a year for an actual violent offence, an attack on police officers? Why has it taken over a year to get to the point where this goes to court and goes before a jury and receives this outcome? The priorities in this country are all wrong, Dan.
Breaking right now, Dominic Cummings has made an extraordinary cocaine claim about the bigwigs within Reform UK after previously meeting with the party's leader, Nigel Farage, to put aside their previous differences and potentially even try to work with the party to prepare for government. But in an astonishing new Substack, Dominic Cummings is really going for reform in quite a lot of detail. He writes, reform. The reform people are way overconfident. They are ahead because everyone collapsed, not because they have a great team. Some of the team are cokeheads. Others are morons. Cokeheads and morons fall apart under pressure. At some point, someone will put them under pressure. They cannot sustain focus. They just chase news cycles. He also added that reform are not recruiting elite talent. He said he wrote months ago that the critical indicator for reform is signs of hiring great people. There's a couple of positive signs, but overall they still resemble the ERG. They've even started recruiting the dregs of the Tory party, MPs and staff. Remainer Jake Berry is not quite Tom Watson, but he's adjacent. If reform continues recruiting these dregs, they'll do something serious damage. It's the exact opposite to what they should be doing, which is recruiting great people representing the best of the country and showing how different they are to the dead old parties, as I wrote in February. They said last year they wouldn't do this, so it's another sign of a clear lack of direction in HQ. He said he's glad he backed the party at the local elections because it's more pressure to accelerate the collapse of the old parties and force people to contemplate more change. But the critical question remains, does Farage want to be PM and will therefore recruit elite talent with all that implies? So far, he is not answering that question. Yes, if he continues, not even to pretend to have a plan to recruit elite talent, then elite talent will more and more conclude that his priority is not creating a team that can control number 10 and change the country. To my superstar panel, Dave Marshall and Father Calvin Robinson. So look, I think he's made some really valid points, actually, about Reform UK. Being completely honest, there is a huge arrogance within that party. It is summed up by their chairman, Zia Youssef, who literally today is talking about the fact that he wants to be chancellor now. And he is this unelected dude who has been given carte blanche by Nigel Farage, even though he quit the party, even though he liked an anti-Semitic tweet. It is astonishing. Now, we don't know exactly who Dominic Cummings is talking about in terms of the cocaine use. That is illegal, so we have to be very careful. But Father Calvin, this is a big deal, isn't it? Some of the team are cokeheads, other are morons. Cokeheads and morons fall apart under pressure. A damning indictment of our potential future government, in your view?
No, not at all. Dominic Cummings is very clever, and I've always said he's very clever. What he's doing here is playing games. Some of his closest allies, some of the people he has helped put into government time and time again, ministers, we know to be cokeheads, and he knows them to be cokeheads. So he's playing a game of pointing a finger. We all know, anyone that knows the top people in Reform knows which people in Reform are cokeheads. We know the people that get them their coke. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to name names because we'll be behind bars, but we know this degeneracy is going on. Dominic Cummings is not separate from that degeneracy. He's just pointing a finger to, I don't know, maybe he wants to be involved in Reform, maybe he wants to shape it, and maybe when he says invite, what did he say? Not elite. Did he say elite?
Elite people, yeah. He wants the elite rather than just sort of going for failed Tories, which I think is
I think we've had enough of the elite, to be honest with you. But when he says you need to work with the elite, I think what he's talking about is him and his team.
Yeah, he likes this concept of like outsiders, sort of tech bros. That's his sort of people.
Yeah, but not all of them. Some of them, and Nadine Dorries's book is the best on this for naming names, but some of them are very key players in British politics and have been for a long time, across the board, actually. And so Dominic Cummings is playing a very clever game here, but he's not wrong. And the Reform Party, from the very top, has a problem with cocaine that needs to be addressed.
So you do think that's an issue?
It is. We know it to be an issue.
Okay. Dave Marshall, does it matter to you? I mean, if we take this, I guess, from a very straightforward point of view, given you're a law and order guy, you're a police guy, taking cocaine is against the law. Some people want drug legalization. I don't. I'm zero tolerance, actually. So to me, it's quite astonishing that this very obvious law breaking would be acceptable when Reform UK are so tough on other people in terms of, maybe we sent a tweet a few years ago that supported Tommy Robinson, for example. Doesn't matter that they're breaking the law.
Yeah, of course it matters. And I am, you won't be surprised to hear pretty zero tolerance on that stuff myself. Yes, you do want the best and the brightest at the top levels of reform, but you do not want to have those people in any way affected in their judgment by consumption of drugs. And if Reform are going to have a strict vetting policy, and we're led to believe they now do, in terms of who's admitted and who is ejected from the party, my belief would be that anyone who is suspected of consuming controlled drugs should be on that list of people for ejection pretty damn quick. I mean, they have to set standards, and they have to set standards that show they are serious about being a credible political force in the United Kingdom. And they're going to take hold of the country and sort out some of the obvious messes that we see around mass migration and crime and some of the economic stuff. They have to do that with a clean slate. They can't be another party of sleaze. We've had enough of that. They need to be the credible alternative, the honest alternative. And I do think that you cannot be taken seriously as the next government in waiting if there's any tolerance whatsoever of this sort of behaviour.
Yeah, I think it's sort of terrible. It's a middle class thing that has happened, Father Calvin Robinson, especially in the elite class, right? And unfortunately, even though Reform UK like to present themselves as being outside the establishment, we know in lots of ways they're part of that establishment, that Westminster, that North London way of thinking. And it's almost like they have forgotten that the consumption of illegal drugs, the consumption of the cocaine that you're sniffing every night when you go out in toilets in Westminster. And by the way, this is no conspiracy. I mean, quite recently, I believe, one of the official, I think, is it called, I mean, again, I'm not one of these Westminster guys, but is it the Strangers Bar or something within the House of Commons, Father Calvin actually had to be shut. And part of that was because there was testing going on, and very often those toilets would test positive for cocaine. That is within our parliament. But they think it's okay, is the point that I'm making. They don't realize that actually your illegal drugs is driving crime that causes lots of pain for lots of other people.
100%. It's degenerate, it's debauched, it's horrible. But I think if we put random drug testing into the Houses of Parliament tomorrow, the whole country would fall apart because they're all doing it. This is the problem. Well, not all of them, but so many of them are doing it. And anyone that works in Westminster knows so many of the key players are cokeheads, and it's bad. And absolutely, Cummings is right to point it out because it needs to end. But unfortunately, many of his side are doing it too. And so we need to say, actually to our politicians, we expect a higher degree of morality from all of you, please. Can you actually be good, standing Christian citizens of England rather than just degenerates who are in there for a good time? And I get it, it's a high pressure environment. I get that. No excuse for breaking the law in that way.
No, indeed. And Father Calvin, unfortunately, the hopes that we had when it looked like Zia Youssef had been driven out of the party and Farage had wanted him to be gone, it has just totally backfired. Because after he threatened, remember, to go public in terms of racism within the party, which he absolutely did, it was to Andrew Pearce in the Daily Mail, Farage was so terrified, and now he's back, even though he's not the chairman of the party. The actual chairman of the party, who was a guy called David Bull, who I actually think is a really decent guy, former presenter on Talk, he's never seen. It's Youssef, who's everywhere. It's just bizarre.
I've known David a long time. I also like David. He's not particularly conservative, certainly not culturally or socially, so he shouldn't be the chairman of a so-called conservative party. But you're right in that Mohammed Ziyad Youssef is all over the place. I don't know how much he's invested in reform, but it's certainly bought him a seat at the table, and that's part of the problem. Our politicians or our politics shouldn't be easily purchasable. It should be about integrity, service, duty, obligation, not about money. And if I had my way, you'd have to be a Briton, or you'd have to be English to stand in England anyway, and Mohammed Ziyad Youssef is not. You'd have to be Christian to stand in English Parliament too, and he is not that either. So he would have no chance in my take on British politics. But unfortunately, we live in a liberal country these days, and anyone can do whatever they like, unless you're a citizen.
Breaking today, fury that King Charles has briefed his displeasure about Donald Trump's strong immigration comments in front of our Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Trump Turnberry this week, and yet another example of our monarch wading into politics and, to be completely honest, going against the views, the fears, the deep-held feelings of his own citizens who are terrified about this illegal invasion of our country, terrified about the demographic change. Yet Charles, who never has to deal with it, who never has to worry about one of his children being sexually assaulted on a street, who never has to worry about being blown up on a tube carriage, he has decided that Trump is wrong and he wants to make his feelings clear. Here's how the Mercian summed it up. Royal aides say King Charles appalled by Donald Trump's comments calling for Europe to end mass migration. Of course he is. GB Politics added sources close to King Charles have informed the Express newspaper that the King is appalled by Donald Trump's recent comments on immigration to the UK. But the most damning reporting actually came from the Daily Beast via their European editor-at-large Tom Sykes, who reported this guy has impeccable aristocratic and royal contacts. King Charles very concerned Trump will rant about immigration during state visit. Fears grow that the president will use his September trip to make inflammatory remarks on immigration. Well, I'm sorry, I don't like doing this. I'm always very clear. As everyone knows, I'm a royalist. I am a monarchist. But Your Majesty, please stop this. Please stop this. Because you don't know how angry we all are. You don't know how close this country is to the brink, and you've got to start being on our side. Or just shut up, okay, like your mum did about these issues, seriously. And I'm sorry if people think I'm being rude, but I'm so angry about this. Because the king had absolutely no problem with that little weasel, Emmanuel Macron, coming over at a state dinner and slamming us over Brexit. And talking about a regular immigration rather than illegal migration. He had no problem with that. So how dare he be worried about what Trump had to say? Which, by the way, I want to play it to you because I think what Trump had to say at Turnberry in front of Starmer was completely reasonable. Watch.
And in your case, a big immigration component, because I know that your attitude has become strong on immigration, strong on the toughness of immigration. But I think whoever's going to be, I think I won because we had a lousy president, to be honest with you. We had an incompetent president. But I won because I was very strong on immigration. Now, we had inflation. We had sort of a bad economy with this guy. We had a lot of problems. But I focused on immigration more than I did anything else. And I think I won because of immigration. I think I won because of the border. I had a bad border where millions of people were coming in to our country illegally. And as you know, in last month, 0 people came into our country illegally, 0. So we went from a bad, incompetently run border to the most competently run border that anybody's ever seen.
Now, King Charles can be as appalled as he wants about those comments, privately. But Your Majesty, this is how your public, your subjects now feel on the issue. Watch.
We have a king that is far more interested in appeasing Islam than he is in helping the British people. He is anti-British people. He has contempt. The minute they arrive, get a free phone, free PlayStation, 3 meals a day, a dentist and a doctor on site. Well, of course they're going to come. The British people can't have that. They come from war-torn countries. Why do they leave their wives and children there and come here for the benefits? And I am terrified for the girls here because they're so naive and they don't understand what they'll go out in their little clothes and don't realize that we've got 1,100 people here that are ready to them.
Not probably who you're imagining to be the usual far-right extremist King Charles. This is reporting, by the way, specifically so you can see the comments that he's made. King Charles appalled by Trump remark as aides fear he will break royal protocol. He's allegedly very concerned that US President Donald Trump could launch into a massive rant about immigration during his second state visit to the UK in September. He will be appalled by what Trump said on Friday, which seems to be entirely driven by his domestic agenda, and will be very concerned about the possibility of a repeat of Trump's outburst in September. A source who is close to the king told the Daily Beast, Charles has spent his entire life promoting tolerance and compassion. If Trump starts sounding off about the levels of immigration to the cameras while the king is standing next to him, the king would find that hard to take. But Father Calvin Robinson, he didn't find it hard to take when Macron was utterly revolting about our democratic decision. Biggest democratic decision in British history, by the way. You were obviously a massive supporter of it, to Brexit, to leave the European Union. At that state dinner, Macron slammed all of us who voted for Brexit. It was sickening. And Charles was right there and he had no problem. So he doesn't have a problem with Trump putting forward a domestic political agenda. It's because he disagrees with Trump's domestic agenda. He disagrees that mass immigration to the United Kingdom is a bad thing because King Charles, has already said in recent weeks, Father Calvin, that he doesn't even believe that there is a border between France and the United Kingdom.
Shocking stuff, isn't it? I am appalled at King Charles, actually. Just this week, he was praised for hosting Ramadan meals and LGBTQ plus lectures in Windsor Castle. Hopefully not at the same time and hopefully not on the roof. But I'm appalled that he will constantly promote Islam, constantly promote liberal ideas and policies. But the moment someone dares say anything conservative, he leaks these messages that he's disturbed or concerned or appalled. Like, who are you? You do not represent the people of Britain. You don't have our best interests at heart. You are not there for the citizens. You are so disconnected from what's going on in your own country that I think we need to readdress the titles that the king has, actually. By the faith of God, the King of the United Kingdom. No, not by the faith of God. Defender of the faith. No, not a defender of the faith, or at least which faith is he defending? Because he spends all his time promoting Islam these days. I wouldn't be surprised if he'd converted. And you're right, Dan, that the country is at breaking point. We're on the brink of something. I think it may very well end up being violent, but the king doesn't seem to recognize that, or he doesn't seem to care. His time is up. I wish he would abdicate, but my main concern is I'm not sure that Prince William would be any better. I think the monarchy is falling apart due to liberalism. This idea that he spent his lifetime promoting tolerance and compassion. Tolerance is not a Christian virtue. We should not be tolerant of evil. We should not be tolerant of people invading our borders. We should not be tolerant of people raping our sisters and daughters. We should not be tolerant of people taking over our country. These things need a push back against. In times gone by, the king would be at the forefront. He'd be the first one out on the battlefield with the banner in his hand, for goodness sake. Now what do we have? Sausage fingers sitting there thinking, oh no, the orange man's going to say bad words. Get out. Give up your crown.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you say about William. I do think there is a difference with William, though, Father Calvin. I think fundamentally there are lots of aspects to him that are woke, but I think he signs up much, much more to his grandmother's philosophy, because he is Prince of Wales now, and you don't see him interfering in politics in the way that Prince Charles, as the Prince of Wales, did constantly get involved. Dave Marshall, how do you feel about this?
He's a lost cause, isn't he? You can see why his mother, God bless her, the late Queen, hung on as long as she did.
Thank God she did.
Decided not to abdicate and hand over the throne to Charles. Listen, he may be appalled. I'm appalled. You're appalled, and millions of ordinary, hardworking, tax-paying British people are appalled. But what we're appalled at is the boatloads of illegal, not irregular, let's be clear on our language here, illegal migrants, fighting age young men from cultures that are not compatible with ours, entering the country by the thousands every week. These people pose a risk. They pose a risk to our economy. They cost the country billions to house them and feed them, and legal aid bills. Culturally, we've talked about that in terms of the impact that they have on British identity, given the scale and the speed of change, demographic change. But they also pose an absolute national security risk in terms of, and Trump's right to point this out, and thank God he did point it out, an awful lot of bad people are coming to this country and either are committing crime or are prepared to do things that are far worse than we've seen up to this point. And thank God someone like Trump stands up and says it like it is, because none of our establishment, none of our political leaders, including Farage, quite honestly, are prepared to do that. Their heads are in the sand over this stuff.
100%.
So if Charles
100%.
is appalled, then that shows how out of touch he is.
But he is.
With the mood of the country.
100%, but he is. But because you remember Father Calvin, his last big intervention, and that's when people like me were saying, honestly, you are not ready to be king was just a few months before the death of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and it was when Boris Johnson was pushing forward with the Rwanda scheme, and he made his opposition to that clear and said that it was fundamentally not British. So unfortunately, we thought he may have learnt his lessons, and I was very complimentary about the fact that he was staying out of politics in the early days of his reign, and I think that was really important. But it almost feels like he can't help himself. And I also think Dave is completely right, Father Calvin, which is that I don't even think Farage understands quite where the country is at the moment. He wants to be moving to the left of the Conservatives on immigration, to the left of the general population on immigration. And that, to me, is madness.
It is madness. And you're right that the king can't help himself, but I think we can't change who we are, right? He is just a political being, and therefore he shouldn't be king. Just the same reason I couldn't be king. I could not sit on that throne and be silent. I would have to speak up about these things, but probably from the opposite position that he's speaking. So he shouldn't be in that position.
Well, interestingly, Calvin, it's what Diana propagated. She, in the famous Panorama interview, and she was a big believer of the monarchy, Princess Diana, even though she had been thrust out of the monarchy. She was a big believer of the monarchy. She was never trying to bring down the monarchy in the way that Meghan Markle was. But Princess Diana said in that famous BBC Panorama interview that Charles just didn't have what it took to be king, and that the throne should have passed from the late Queen directly to Prince William. But look, that isn't what happened. Obviously, there was a rehabilitation effort over Camilla and the fact that he was able to marry this divorcee. But interestingly, Diana, she foresaw a lot of this. She knew this man, and she just didn't really, she didn't really feel that he sort of had the prerequisites to be king. Maybe she was right.
I think she was right, and you're also right to point out, he did marry, they're both divorcees, he and Camilla, and that was illegal until 2 years before their wedding, for a good reason, in that we're supposed to hold our monarchy up to a higher standard and expect them to set a good moral standard for the country. And if they're just shagging whoever they want and marrying whoever they want and bumping off whoever they want, what good are they? They're nothing morally to us, are they? It's actually worse having a constitutional monarchy at this point than it is to not have one in the first place. And I am also a monarchist and a royalist. I just don't think it's working in the current situation.
Well, I mean, never forget that the late Queen Elizabeth II put the happiness of her sister, Princess Margaret, to one side by refusing her request to marry Peter Townsend, Captain Townsend, who was a divorcee. And as a result, lots of people said Margaret lived quite an unhappy life because she hadn't been able to settle down with the man who she loved. But the late Queen believed that as a member of the royal family, you put your duty and you put those traditions ahead of sometimes your personal satisfaction, and that was something that Charles couldn't do. But look, on this issue,
do you not think Princess Anne would be better?
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, the thing about Princess Anne, there's no question. There's no question about that. But of course, again, be careful what you wish for, because it would have been Prince Andrew, of course, who would have been next in line to the throne back then. But yes, Princess Anne has all of those qualities that you want. You have absolutely no idea what she thinks politically. Absolutely no idea. She would never get involved. She's hardworking. She's completely stoic. She's no nonsense. She doesn't like to show her emotions in public. She doesn't particularly like politicians. I think you're right, Calvin. Charles
She's more
is
of a man than a king.
Some of those traditional qualities, yeah. And, Charles, he likes hanging out with Starmer. Like, God, there's no way you'd get Princess Anne inviting Starmer for a sleepover at Windsor Castle. But, that is the point. The whole point of hereditary monarchy is you can't choose who you get. But that's also why Charles has to be bloody careful. And he has to be very careful because we're just not at a point now. Like someone like me, I never the only times that I've really attacked Charles have been when he has waded into politics. It's like, you don't know what you're playing with. You don't know what you're risking. But look, thank you so much. What a fabulous superstar panel, Father Calvin Robertson, and making his outspoken debut. And tell us, Dave, the name of your book, which is available on Amazon.
Yeah, it's The Fall of Policing, and it's available on Amazon.
Yeah, The Fall of Policing, because, my God, that has happened. That has happened. So perfect timing. Thank you both so much. Okay, Greatest Britain Union Jackass coming up in just a moment, but a couple of your comments. Jack Lemon writes, it really wasn't a smart move by Tommy. This is speaking about Tommy Robinson, especially just before the September 13th event. He knows he's got a massive target on his back. He might not want security all the time, but he needs it. I agree, he does need security. I did say that yesterday. Richard B said, I thought Elon Musk covered Tommy's legal fees before. Won't he cover this? My understanding, Richard B, is, although I don't know this for an absolute fact, is that Elon Musk covers Tommy's legal fees for sort of free speech related issues. And Kenny says, I am waiting for the time Trump realizes Truth Social is being censored, and Starmer told him it wouldn't be. Yes, we've got to keep across Truth Social. Please, if you see anything censored on Truth Social because of the Online Safety Act, because we know my digest on X was censored the other day. Okay, let's get to your nominees for Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. So we'll kick off with the Worst Britain in the World today. Your nominees: Diane Abbott, nominated by It's Only Me 44 for being leader of the pro-migrant protest group Stand Up to Racism. She is the president. Jeremy Corbyn, nominated by Libby Rachel, truly one of the vilest people on the planet who would run this country further into the ground if it's even possible at this stage. And Yvette Cooper, nominated by Muriel MBE, for describing murdered children in Southport as having lost their lives when they were brutally murdered by an extremist, which was preventable. And, okay, there's a tie for runner-up. It's the former lovers, Diane Abbott and Jeremy Corbyn, but today's Union Jackass, Yvette Cooper, with 48% of your vote. Now, we've got a special show coming up on Friday with Peter Lloyd, who has just produced an incredible documentary about the downfall of Liverpool. So you really do want to be with us for that. But because we've got this special show on Friday, I'm going to put forward now, tonight, straight after the show, the nominees for the Worst Britain in the World this week, and we will announce them at the end of tomorrow's show. So, of course, from today, it's Yvette Cooper. From Tuesday, it's Sadiq Khan. From Monday, it's Narinder Kaur. We always get tens of thousands of votes. Please do vote. It will be in the posts or community tab on my YouTube channel immediately after the show. Okay, thank you so much for your company today. Oh, I've got to reveal Greatest Britain, though. Danny Kruger, nominated by EC4 Faith for standing up for Christianity in Parliament. Of course, he addressed a nearly empty House of Commons chamber to deliver a high-impact speech calling for Christian revival and a recovery of explicitly Christian political values in the United Kingdom. I'm sure that's something that Father Calvin was highly supportive of. Okay, P. Diner is standing by now because we're going to move over to Substack for all of the royal latest at www.outspoken.live. Do join us there. But we will be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. And most importantly, I promise,